There's a lot wrong with the industry, and the industry is so traditional that sometimes they miss seeing the bigger picture, and this leads to amendments, and amendments cost a lot of money.
How does a clinical trial really work, and why does it take that long?
So on average, it does take around 11 to 12 years.
Most people have no idea about what actually happens between discovering a new drug and actually taking it. It can take up to 11 years and more than $6 billion. If you've ever wondered why there's still no cure for cancer, or whether if AI can actually change our lives, have a listen to this conversation.
If I'm able to decrease the time that it gets to this asset to get to the patients from 11 years to 5, then my impact is on the patients.
Our guest today is Clara, co-founder of Biorce, the AI platform that is cutting drug development time by 50% and is reshaping how medicines reach patients. Biorce raised $52.5 million, the largest Series A raise in the Iberian Peninsula in health tech history, and last year finished 200% above their revenue target. It's different to create a cure for these diseases because that's still one of the biggest inequalities.
If you think about it, shortening timelines will also eventually translate into less money being spent. If less money is being spent, then it also means that the drug doesn't need to cost as much.
What are you actually looking when it comes to hiring?
Well, we're looking for the best out there. That's the short answer.
I don't doubt it.
But he had 26 nationalities in the company.
This is a space where we sit down with the founders building the companies that you actually want to work for. If you're ready for a career that allows you to stop choosing between money and purpose, you've found your home. Welcome to Reinventing Capitalism. Hi, Clara. How are you?
Hi, Claudia. All good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm really good. As you know, I'm super excited for this interview. So thank you for getting connected from the other side of the world, almost.
Almost. Just across the pond for now.
Exactly. Just across the pond. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. You've been an operator inside different clinical trial companies, and now you are the co-founder of one, Biorce. I want to start by understanding what brought you to found a company, because it doesn't seem the easiest of things in your space.
Definitely. So Biorce comes from a very personal story of Pedro. Pedro is our CEO and also my husband. Pedro's dad was diagnosed with an unresectable phase 4 melanoma in June 2021. He at the time was given a couple months to live, maybe 3 with some luck. And we were like, that's not okay. We were both working in the industry, so we use a lot of our connections, and to be fair, we explored and exploited all of the connections we could. We eventually were able to find a trial that his dad could fit. For background, his dad was at the time living in Colombia, and for some visa constraints, we couldn't take him to Portugal, where we are originally from, and the trial that I mentioned was not recruiting in Colombia. So we found a way through the CMO of the company to enroll him in the trial under compassionate use. And that participation in the trial actually extended his life until August 2022, when he eventually passed away. So we went from having a couple months to having a little bit over a year. In that year, we were able to take him back to Portugal. We were able to celebrate another birthday. We were able to celebrate a Christmas. So we gained time with him. And after he passed away, Pedro definitely went through a young age crisis, like he calls him. And we were definitely very disturbed about the fact that clearly there's a problem. We always kind of knew about this problem. But all of a sudden, it became very real for us. And it was even more real, the fact that we were part of this problem. So at the time, we started wondering and kind of thinking about how can we not solve it, but how can we improve this? How can we make it better for other people not to have to go through this? How do we build more time for people? A year and a half later, Pedro attended JP Morgan, and he came back and he called me and said, hey, I had this idea. I wanted to run it by you. So he started thinking about something that using AI would facilitate and accelerate clinical trial protocols. And I was like, this makes zero sense. You need to explain it better when you get home. So he got home and he had his iPad full of notes. You could read it no matter where the direction you would turn the iPad, you could read it. And he was like, look, kind of crazy idea, but if we're able to make it, this would definitely change the industry. So that's how in January 2024, we built Biorce. We then spoke with our two other co-founders, Jose and Diogo, our CTO and CPO respectively. And the four of us started building a company in a very traditional space, so definitely risky. But 2 years and almost half later, we're still here, we're growing, we're, for the big picture, we're doing well. So yeah, that's the story that led into the existence of Biorce.
Super interesting. So you and Diego, he brings kind of like as a couple, he brings more like the strategy, but you were the one with the expertise that kind of had to decide whether if it was like a feasible idea or not.
Pedro, first of all. Diogo is our CPO.
Okay, Pietro.
Pedro is our CEO. So Pedro had been already working in the industry. He had already built a CRO. So a CRO is a clinical research organization. So it's a type of company that helps pharmaceutical companies and biotechs conduct the studies. So Pedro had built a CRO. He had managed a CRO. He comes from a business background and a business life and work. So definitely he is the mind behind how to build the company. And obviously I'm a scientist by background. I've always worked in the industry on the clinical operations side and on the clinical and scientific side of a clinical trial. So definitely I'm the one that brings the scientific knowledge and the scientific validation of what we're doing and if it was even feasible, what Pedro was imagining at the time. So yeah.
Most of us have taken medicine without thinking how the medicine even got there. And it seems, for what I've read, that bringing something to market can take 10, 15 years and can cost over $6 billion just to develop one single drug. Help me help us, the audience, understand how does a clinical trial really work and why does it take that long? Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, so on average, it does take around 11 to 12 years. So how it works is whenever scientists, epidemiologists, whatever kind of ist that might exist, develops a new molecule in the lab, the molecule goes through a preclinical phase, which essentially is like we all imagine the white mice with red eyes in the lab. So that's the first step, and that's the preclinical phase. Once you get results that are not only demonstrating efficacy, but also safety or potential safety, you then decide from a business perspective and a business view, because obviously it will cost a lot of money to bring that molecule into the market if you want to bring it to clinical. So once you decide that, you then do a first in human phase. You then move forward to path, which goes from phase 1 to phase 3, and then the phase 4 is already post-market, so essentially observational studies or not, but essentially that study how the population that is now using the treatment actually reacts to the treatment on a long-term phases. So the reason why it takes so long is because phase 1s are usually fast-ish in terms of it takes usually weeks or a couple months, not something very it still takes months that you wouldn't be able to measure in years. Then you go to phase 2, where you actually start exploring the other side. So initially you explore safety, you then start to explore efficacy, and then when you go to phase 3 is usually the largest and also the longest one, because it's the confirmatory phase. And why is it called the confirmatory phase? Exactly because of that, because that is the point in time where you are actually confirming the results. You are actually confirming if the efficacy of the drug is there, or the efficacy of the combination that you're studying is there, or if the efficacy of your device or whatever it is that you're studying. And also, more than the efficacy, the safety. The safety of the patient is also something, and is always something that is taken very, very seriously. So the way that it's done is this, but then obviously in between phases, you have to present results and you have to make sure that those results are according to the regulations. Should it be the EMA regulations or the FDA regulations, which differ and which each has their own specifications on what needs to be there from the results for the drug to be allowed to move forward or not. And then obviously when you start adding the regulation preparation, the submission package preparation, the review, the approval, the then preparation of the actual next phase of a trial to understand, okay, so what are we actually trying to achieve with this new molecule? Are we trying to treat? Are we trying to cure? Are we trying to extend survival follow-up? What are we trying to do? So all of these things in the end up to add to maybe 7-8 years. And then the difference in the 7 to 8 to the 11, 12, and on average, it's because there's a lot wrong with the industry. And the industry is so traditional that sometimes they miss seeing the bigger picture. And this leads to amendments. And amendments cost a lot of money to the sponsors, so the pharmaceutical companies and the biotechs. They cost a lot of money. They cost a lot of time to the patients, because the longer it takes you to bring a molecule or a treatment or a drug to the market, the less time patients will have to use it. Therefore, the less efficacy the drug will have on that patient's treatment, for example. And what we discovered actually when we started building Biorce and when we started looking at where we could help, what kind of issues and pains we could really, what we could really tackle, we understand that the percentile of amendments that were human error led was so high that had they had something to tell them, to flag that, hey, this is an issue, this is wrong, this is badly worded, has not been properly reviewed, or if it has, it didn't go through proofread, something simple, those amendments could have been surpassed. And if they were surpassed, then your clinical trial would have taken maybe a couple of years less than it actually took. So that's how it eventually takes all of this 11 to 12 years rather than the maybe being very optimist 5 to 6 for that it could take.
No, it's really long. It's really long, and people need to be really committed to wanting to get to the bottom of how to do things differently, because otherwise people would just lose patience and leave it halfway. But so you've told us about this long process of what a clinical trial is. How does that fit into Biorce? Tell us about what is Aika and what it replaces.
So Aika is actually, funny enough, Aika is time in Finnish, because obviously, as you might have noticed, the entire story that led us to Biorce and what we're trying to really give back is time. So Aika is an end-to-end platform that utilizes AI to tackle all of these different pains across the industry. The initial thought of Aika and the initial thought that led to Biorce was in terms of an AI that could really read, review, and build protocols, saving obviously thousands or hundreds at least of hours from the clinical teams. We then understood that, one, for us to get to the protocol piece, we would actually need a lot more knowledge. And two, there are so much more pains across the industry that we could tackle. So we really embedded all of those needs into Aika to the point where Aika is not able to help your teams with the business development, with the strategic positioning of a company, with the protocol piece 100%, with really understanding what would be your patient burden and how do we fix this? How can we make it less burdening for the patient? With the feasibility aspect of the trial, which is something that if you don't get right is usually half of the fault, or half of the blame is usually on poorly done feasibility assessments. It can help with your patient matchmaking. It can help you with your budgets and contracts, which when you are starting the point where you're already on site and study startup, then you have little pieces that really fit into how can we do it faster. One of them is definitely budgets and contracts. It's usually a huge pain for all of the parties involved. So it's not a pain for the sponsor, it's not a pain for the site, it's a pain for the sponsor, the CRO, and the site, and all the resources that work on that. So Aika is really aiming to be an end-to-end, and like Pedro likes to say, the long-term goal for Aika is that Aika is the standard, and that Biorce allows a one-click clinical trial. So that's the long-term vision.
But that's the preparation of the clinical trial. Or you mean that whole process from start to the end of the 11 years?
Yes. So all of the clinical part where it fits. So from the phase 1 to your end of phase 3, when you're actually able to come to market, that's where we insert ourselves. Because it's not only about the preparation, but also then defining the patients, recruiting the patients, really, or going back, finding where the patients are, which is part of the feasibility, going to those sites, activating the sites, which also entails then the contracts and the budgets piece, the negotiation, the execution, the identification of patients, the recruitment of patients, the monitoring of these patients in the trial, which is part of the other module, the health economics piece from the strategic point of view. So it's really everything, not just the preparation for trial, but the conduction from end to end.
And who would you say that your product helps the most? Is it pharma companies? Is it the researchers? Is it the patients? Who do you feel that you are contributing to the most?
I would say that we're configuring the platform to the sponsor side and the CROs. So definitely to the pharmaceutical companies, the biotech companies, and the CROs to be able to liaise between the both sides of sponsor and site. But ultimately, the persona, the profile that the platform impacts the most is the patient. Because if I'm able to decrease the time that it gets to this asset to get to the patients from 11 years to 5, then my impact is on the patients. And that really is our focus, is to be able to impact the patients' lives.
Is that the expected reduced amount of time that clinical trials would get using your platform? So from 11 to 5?
Yes. So 5 would be a little bit less than half. Our goal is to be at the maximum there. And then that's our realistic goal. And then if you ask Pedro, or if you ask anyone who's the optimistic side of the coin, definitely would like to reduce that to 3 years. But we have a lot of work in front of us to get there.
Every good thing requires a lot of work.
Definitely.
So it seems that a clinical trial takes very long. You're trying to reduce the amount of years. There's also a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of people that need to kind of tap into the process to get something to life. But for example, we saw during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, that there were these vaccines that were thrown into the market in record time. Do you feel that the industry can adapt to this record time, like all the players in the industry, or how do we keep up with it so that everything is really used to the maximum?
I feel like COVID was the exception. Also because everything else stopped. So there was nothing else being done other than that. Also because if you think about the science behind COVID, we think about COVID as what we had in 2020, but COVID-19 is the type of flu that led into what happened in 2020. But COVID is really the name of the type of flu or cold, let's put it in simple jargon, that we had. And then we had the stripe of COVID-19 that led into all of this. So if you think about something like you or a lot of people around the world take yearly flu shots, right? So it was really more about targeting COVID-19 and input them into those shots. Was it safe? It's ambiguous. It's an ambiguous answer. Was it needed? Yes. Was it a necessity? Also, yes. Are we able to say that if no one would have been vaccinated, the fatality would have been the exact same? We are unable to say that. Do we have still today a lot of studies that are looking into the long-term follow-up of people that took the COVID vaccines, and then within the COVID vaccines, the type of COVID vaccines that they took? Yes, we all know that there's still a lot of studies being done because, like you said, everything was hyper accelerated. So there's a lot of things that were not tested, were not assured, were not done from the usual path of trials. If the question is directed to, is it possible? 100%. It's definitely possible for us in the industry, for the industry, to do things in an accelerated way that would lead into treatments and cures to be out in the market in astonishing speed. Yes. If they need help, also yes.
Okay. Okay. No, good answer, because it gives a lot of
Sorry.
perspective.
It's just about, like, usually people think about COVID-19 as this big scary thing, and definitely it was, because it led us to be stranded at home and to eventually a lot of lives being lost. But the thing is that COVID-19 is the specific stripe, but all of us, or a lot of us, receive yearly shot flus or shots for the flu. And COVID is just, if you go in and you Google, and this is a very simple way to do it. If you look into COVID, on what COVID is and what's the difference between any other stripes of COVID and COVID-19, then you understand why COVID-19 was everything you saw, and why COVID-17 and COVID-16, those are just the names of the different stripes that we have. The COVID-19 one was just a differentiated stripe. That's why the flu didn't work, or the flu shot didn't work, and why we needed targeted vaccines for it.
How much competition does Biorce have? Because it seems like an obvious problem, and I'm wondering why other players haven't already done it.
If we have competitors, there's two answers. There's the no, there's the yes. There's the yes because definitely there's a lot of companies trying to do the same thing, trying to tackle the same space and trying to tackle the same issue with the similar solution. Why you also have the no as the answer? Because no one else has been able to do it. Even the big companies around the industry who have tried and who claim that they can do the same thing, when you actually then see the product, it doesn't do the same thing. It's not able to provide you with a protocol that is 85% accurate with the protocol that is actually then submitted, was the bare minimum that we had. So the first protocol that was done using Aika and using Biorce was 85% of the protocol that was later on submitted and approved by the FDA. I haven't heard about anyone else being able to do such thing, because unfortunately there's AI and LLM hallucinations. I think that's the issue that majority of AI companies face, is the hallucinations. And I'm not going to say that we have been able to solve hallucinations, because one, no one would believe me, and two, Jose will probably kill me. But we have definitely been able to reduce them to the point where they're non-significant to the amount of information we put up there.
Speaking about AI, you started the company in the moment where AI started becoming a thing. How much did you know about AI back then? Like, was it the plan to build through an LLM or not, and you did it on the go?
No, it was always a plan to use AI and to get the most out of AI to be able to go where we wanted to go. How much did I know about AI? I knew that something called ChatGPT existed. I wasn't, and I still am not, a great user of ChatGPT. I do use AIs around their existence for some things, if nothing else, to prove to our clients that ChatGPT building a protocol is completely different from Aika building a protocol. And we actually wrote a publication that is now being published on it. But it was definitely a challenge. Jose, our CPO, was he's ex-Microsoft, so he was leading teams there on AI and AI implementation, and so him and his team on at Biorce really lead the LLM strategy on how and what can we extract from AI knowledge and input into our platform. But it was always the goal to use and to build an AI, an LLM, an AI clinical trial assistant. This is how Aika was, well, back when it was called Jarvis, how we defined it. It was really your AI clinical trial assistant, because if nothing else, that's how we really could define it. And then it continued to evolve the same way that AI continued to evolve, and the same way that we were able to iterate more and more using AI. That's how we went about it.
Bless AI.
Yes.
If we go back to the competition question, I just want to close the loop. I'm curious, who would you say you're most afraid of? Other biotech startups or the big players that could potentially build something similar themselves?
It's not even the biotechs. There's big pharmas that have or are putting in place or were putting in place partnerships with AIs. There are companies that have had partnerships with ChatGPT and OpenAI, where after some of the issues that you've had with data leakage and the usage of the data that it's ingested, it was a strong indicator that they needed a partner that actually understood the clinical trial vision in this clinical trial industry, and not just something very, very generic. So I would say that, not that I'm afraid, but I feel like our competitors will eventually be either the big pharmas that are creating something internally, or the big vendors that you have out there that are also trying to create something. And in our case, is really, we were first comers to the industry with this technology. So for us is really continue to build as fast as possible with the amount of quality that we've brought and we continue to bring to our clients and our partners, in order to not only be first comer, but also continuing to, there's this expression that I sometimes use, which is early bird gets the worm. So it's in terms of being the early bird that we already were, and we were able to get worms that way, but also continuing to get the worms, because then it's not just because you're an early bird, but because we also continuously deliver to our clients, and they see the added value from it, rather than other players in the space.
I agree. Being the early bird, of course, gives you an advantage. I'm wondering about the speed of AI because it evolves super fast. So I guess someone could copy what Biorce does in a fast manner. I don't know. I don't know if that's the advantage or a disadvantage.
I would say that definitely that is one of our biggest fears, is that someone steals our code. Obviously, there's a lot of legal restraints we can take, but definitely in terms of copying what we do, you would have to know what we are doing in order to replicate, right? And then there's legal boundaries for it, unless you go to countries who don't really care about those legal boundaries. Let's not shame call anyone, but we all know that there are regions in the earth that don't really consider those legal boundaries as a boundary. They just consider it as a good suggestion that they may follow or not follow. So it's really about making it hard to copy.
That's the best answer so far.
I mean, if they don't know what we're doing, they can't copy it. So they can try to replicate, but like our commercial team usually uses this and says, there's the piece of the secret sauce that you would have to be one of us, or you would have to get into our heads to understand what it is.
For sure, for sure. So something that I've also been thinking about while preparing for this interview is that there are obviously some diseases that are prioritized, some diseases that are not when it comes to to clinical trials. And I couldn't help but wonder that with science, we've achieved so many things, from technology to space and going to the moon. But there are still a lot of diseases that we don't know how
Understood.
to, yeah, exactly, understood, and that we don't know how to solve. I'm wondering, how does that happen? And if do you think that a solution like Biorce is going to contribute to that?
I feel like AI will help with a lot in this space of the unknown. Because if we look at historic decisions, we really only know about what, 20% of our oceans. We went to the moon once in 1969, if my memory doesn't fail me. And as far as I'm concerned, we haven't been back there in a while, or back there to the point where we actually not up there, but actually on the moon. So hopefully on our space, AI will definitely help in understanding some diseases, understanding some patterns, understanding some of the triggers, and some of the systematic knowledge of something. There's now already imaging AIs that are able to prevent and diagnose pre-cancer, because from a mammography they were able to understand that there's a strange body or a strange spot, whatever, that probabilistic speaking will most likely evolve to cancer due to X, Y, and Z. So hopefully there will be still a lot that we can bring into the industry. If I think that will be Biorce, I don't think so. Also because we don't work in the diagnostics area. I hope and I believe that you will have companies, you will have AI players that will definitely able to solve some of the mysteries that we still have with and will continue to have with the humans' brains. So definitely something that I'm eager to see 100%.
Actually, I was reading that the CEO of Anthropic claimed that through AI, or thanks to AI, we would be able to decrease a huge amount the number of years that it was needed to solve these problems. I think it was like something like from 100 to 5. Like that was the claim.
Why not? I mean, look, don't get me wrong. If we're able to take 5 years rather than 100 years to find a cure, or to find and have enough perspective into the human brain where we can understand why Alzheimer's happened, not more than just having the gene or having the market marker. My God, why does Alzheimer happen? What does it trigger Alzheimer? Like, why are people like, why would you have the marker or the gene that leads into an extremely rare condition? There's so many things that we don't understand, and that even if we understand why it happens, the why before the why it happens, but what leads to that. I think that I can't wait to have that sorted. If it will be in my lifetime, I would very much like it to be. Not sure if you will. Also not sure if we'll be able to find out what more than 20% of our oceans look like during my lifetime. But I don't know, maybe we'll also make some breakthroughs on longevity, and I end up living until 200, and those 100 to 5 years, even if not fully accomplished, I'll be able to see part of it.
That would be quite amazing, actually. Just for the curiosity of it, right? Like, we don't know
If
what will
nothing else,
happen.
yeah.
If nothing else. Something that I find very interesting, especially considering the concept of reinventing capitalism and purpose-driven businesses, is that it's different to create a cure for these diseases than to have as many people have access to these cures, right? Because that's still one of the biggest inequalities, like people having access to them, and actually the majority of people not having it. Do you think that shortening the speed through which we find these cures will also shorten or make smaller this inequality?
I feel like if you think about it, shortening timelines will also eventually translate into less money being spent. If less money is being spent, then it also means that the drug doesn't need to cost as much to pay itself to the sponsor because they own the patent. So for a certain amount of years, they can explore it how much they want. But if they don't spend the 6 billion that you mentioned to bring a molecule to market, and they actually only spent a couple, still a lot of money, still a lot of zeros. But then from 2 to 6, there's 4 million in between that allow for the price of the drug in your around the corner pharmacy to cost a lot less. Because if you think about 6 million to 2 million to 2 billion, still a lot of money, yes, but it's, if my math doesn't fail me, it's 3 times less. So which means that if you go to the pharmacy and whatever drug costs you, even with your insurance or with your governmental reimbursement, still costs you $15. If it's then costing 3 times less because the sponsor and the pharmaceutical company no longer needs to reimburse as much or to be repaid that much, then instead of 15, it will probably cost 5. So in terms of allowing access to more people, I think that it's within the chain of action to reach to that point, because it's all about takes less time, costs less money, therefore doesn't need to be costs as much, therefore there will be more available, so we will reach more pharmacies. If it reaches more pharmacy, it reaches more patients, and because it's reaching more patients and it's actually not as expensive as we initially thought about, then it reaches even more patients because there's less power of less economic power needed to be able to access that. And I think that is something that we'll see even across not only countries that are very public health led, but also countries like the US, where you have a private health being it's a private health led country. I think you'll see that.
For sure. Let's get into the concept of talent. As we were talking earlier before the interview, this is what I'm most passionate about. I also wanted to mention, as we also discussed, that you raised just above $50 million in the last 3 years, which was the biggest Series A in the whole in the whole Iberian Peninsula, which is a major milestone. And it seems that one of the things that you are first focusing on, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's growing the team, and you're growing from I think you were like 50, 60, and now to 200, 250. What are you actually looking when it comes to hiring?
Well, we're looking for the best out there. That's the short answer.
I don't doubt it.
But no, but we're looking into, we were also, and I think that it's very important to mention here that we've been very lucky in terms of the culture we've been building in the company and how lucky we've been to hire the right people to the right roles. Thank you. That are also very much fitting in that culture, therefore allowing us to continue nurturing that culture across the 3 offices we have. So definitely we want not only extremely good professionals, but also professionals that are able to fit that cultural environment that we have. We have people from around the world. I did a list in January, before we were in the process of moving to the US, where I was just checking like, how many nationalities do we have at this point? And bear with, because at the time we were like 50 something in January. We are currently, I think we breached today the 130 milestone. Not milestone, but head count. But so we were less than half than now, and we had 26 nationalities in the company. So there's a lot of differences, cultural-wise, religions-wise, beliefs-wise. And it's important for everyone to understand that we're all different. We're all here, however, for the same thing, which is to make the mission of Biorce come to reality, which is essentially to make people's lives better, to make people's illnesses less, to have less weight in their lives, to have more time with their loved ones, to have more time with their families, to have more time to enjoy life, if nothing else, because that's all we want. And I think anyone can relate to that. Even if you don't have a personal history, a personal experience with that, with which I always hope no one has, I feel like everyone can relate. So whenever we are looking for talent, we're looking for people that can relate to what we're doing, wanting to do it just for the sake of wanting to make it better for others, wanting someone that is eager to learn, eager to run, eager to do everything new. And then obviously we have our own values in the company. And usually when you think about company values, you think about little words like I don't know, innovation or something like that. And with Biorce, we have a little bit more than words, and that actually goes with what we're looking to have when we're hiring, which is really people that build fast and are okay with breaking faster, as long as they understand that to build with quality, sometimes they just need to break. And okay, I guess. So
What you said resonates a lot because it's very important to find people that truly believes in what you're doing, because that helps with not only engagement and productivity, but also with retention and finding people that truly care about the problem that you're solving. It's something that allows people to be patient and to understand that this is a long-term project that they're contributing to. What is the goal for this year? Because I thought I had seen that you guys are going to reach like 200 250 people. I'm gonna, like, also for the audience, I'm gonna reshare like the job openings and everything, so just for them to know what are the company's goals.
yeah, so we initially did share whenever we came out with the announcement also about our Series A, we did share that we were going to grow up to 250 by the end of the year, which after we redone our business plan, our growth strategy, we understood that it would be 250 by mid-year, which obviously now we are currently at 130, so we are getting closer and closer at a speed of a lightning. So definitely the goals of the company are, we have moved our pipeline entirely to 2026. So everything that we had planned to come out to production and development by 2027 has been pulled back to 2026. So we have the remainder of the 8 months of the year to accomplish that. And that's the reason why we are hiring so much and we're building so much. The second goal is definitely to, I wouldn't say it's a goal to reach these numbers, these astronomical numbers of people. It's more in terms of, this is what we work for, and we're building so much that we need more hands on deck. Because currently we have a lot of hands and we have a lot of talented hands, but definitely we need more hands to be able to build things on our timelines according to our standards and our metrics. So yeah, so the goals are currently to break fast but build faster.
Is that how you would define in a sentence Biorce's culture?
I don't think I can define Biorce's culture in a sentence, to be fair. I can tell you that we have 3 values. We have Biorce effect, Biorce way, and Biorce style. I feel like Biorce culture is very rooted into the understanding that it's a go big or go home situation where everyone might need to put in extra hours, but you're rewarded for it. You might need to explain something 10 times to the same person because they haven't understood. And that is something that happens a lot with my team, for example, because we make a point not to hire people that come from a scientific background for every department but the scientific department, for the sake that they bring fresh eyes, they bring fresh opinions, they bring fresh heads, they bring fresh everything in terms of what you're doing and how are you doing it. And then for my team, obviously, does that make it more complicated to deal with the teams? No, it just makes it that whenever I'm hiring for my team, I also make sure that they're people that like to teach, because they will have to teach and they will have to repeat themselves sometimes for our engineers, our researchers, our project managers and product managers to understand what's the clinical trial and how do I make it better. if I have no idea what it is, right? So I feel like the Biorce culture is very hard to explain, but I also feel like when you understand like the build fast, break faster situation, it's really like one of the questions that we get a lot is speed or quality. And there's no or, is speed and quality. And there's no other way to go about it with us and with the company. So it's really about like, and if you pardon my French, I will tell you the Biorce way, which is no dickheads and no bullshit. Because that's really what we try to do in terms of culture is we have an open door. If you have a problem, if you have a doubt, if you have a question, come to us. We'll be the first ones to answer. If it's not us, if it's not me, and there's a person from my department that needs a question answered right now, especially now that I'm 7 hours behind them. So by the time I get online, and trust me, I start my day extremely early. By the time I'm online, majority of them are getting to the late or the final hours of their way of work. So it's really about like go to the point and just build fast and with quality.
I think that definitely exemplifies the culture. And from what I've seen interviewing so many founders like you and hiring for so many founders like you, culture is the key because that's how you cascade down the mission. This is how people live by what you believe, and this is how you retain talent. You can attract through the mission because obviously companies like yours are solving a real problem. People want to be of service, but culture is what really retains talent. Um, so I actually think this is a good opportunity to say that like reinventing capitalism was built for this to help people find the companies that are changing the world and that want to be part of it through this culture that it's very cohesive and that it's likely to stay and build something in the long term. So yeah, so for the audience, any company looking to hire, here we are. Any talent looking to be hired, here we are as well. So don't hesitate to contact us. But back to Clara, we have the last question for Clara. I think I would like to close on more of a personal note, and would like to ask you about a moment that you think that brought you where you are. It seems that you did a lot of things. You've lived in many places. You now founded Biorce. What is, like a memorable moment that you think that changed the direction of both your personal life and professional life?
I feel like it's a culmination of different things. I'm a lawyer and nutritionist by background. I've never practiced any of them. I always wanted to be a doctor. Ever since I was growing up, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor. My mom was the chief of surgery of our hometown's hospital back in Portugal. And she was always an idol, and I wanted to be a great doctor, a great professional like my mom. And I didn't get into med school in Portugal. I'm into law school eventually. I studied a little bit of med school in the US, and for personal reasons, I had to go back home. And I decided that due to those reasons, I didn't want to be far away from home and far away from family, having to count on 6+ hours of traveling, plus airport hours, plus everything else. So I feel like the direction that my life took was a little bit trying to find what would make me happy while still bringing some impact to the world. When I started working in the industry, I started working as a CTA, which is essentially a clinical trial administrator where you kind of take care of everything. I was a CRA, which monitors the study for a little bit. I hated it. And I'm very open about the fact that I hated being a CRA. I worked in project management of clinical trials, and then eventually I moved into site and study startup, where I was 10+ years. Majority of my career was in this space, because I felt like this is where I can actually have an impact on how soon, how fast, how good this clinical trial can actually be built and can actually be conducted for us to actually see patients get this faster. And with Pedro's dad story, with the point of Biorce, with my own personal history with diseases and investigational drugs, I just felt at that point that this is where I can actually do something that will impact not a few dozens or a few hundred patients that are enrolled in the study that I manage, in the study that I oversee. This is how we're able to impact the world. And yeah, and look, I already loved what I did before I created Biorce. And then when we created Biorce, I don't care if I have to work 20 hours in a day. I do it for our mission. I do it for what we want to achieve. I do it for the potential change that we might be able to bring to the world and to this industry, into so many countless people. So yeah, I mean, there was really no like key moment. I think it was a path that led me here, and couldn't ask for anything different.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of ending the interview because after all, when you look back, you realize that every step built towards that path. It's interesting to ask this question because sometimes there's people that do have like that, like a eureka moment, or like people that change their trajectory, or like an experience or something. But the majority actually, like, you go back and everything kind of makes sense. And I think that it's absolutely amazing that you're doing what you're doing. It's also the epitome of reinventing capitalism and the companies that we work with, because it involves so many things. It involves biotech, it involves social impact, it involves solving inequality in a way where you can use the system to tackle all of these problems. So I'm super excited for people to listen to these, and to hopefully get a lot of people inspired and interested about Biorce. So thank you so, so much, Clara.
No, thank you, Claudia. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all of the great questions. It was an absolute pleasure. So yeah, thank you.